when it comes from a performance or a conduct position, you're going to look at it from two perspectives, one from the employee side, one from the employer side. If an employee is coming to you for advice, you're going to be asking them, to set and ask for clear goals of the employer, note dates, save emails, meetings, notes, and so forth to um, compile the information necessary to understand what's occurred. And from an employer's point of view, um, it might be slightly different. You might be asking, well, is the employment contract, the position description clear? The duties, responsibilities, are there key performance indicators clear when it comes to things like performance? Um, are deadlines in writing? You know, um, you're going to ask them, have they got all those things documented? So the way you approach, from my perspective, the way you approach the conversation with the employee versus the employer is going to be slightly different.
One of the tools that is often going to be helpful for both sides is putting in place some sort of performance improvement plan where you actually have sort of a conversation about the agreed goals that the employee should be hitting. Uh, but when we talk about goals, it's often not enough just to sort of have some lofty, ambitious ideal of what the perfect employee might be able to achieve. It's helpful to think about smart goals. And so this isn't really a legal concept, but a smart goal is a goal which is specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. So when you think about a goal that you might set for an employee or which an employee might want to have included in their improvement plan, it's not very helpful to have a goal which is something like Ruben will produce better reports. That no one knows what better or worse is. That doesn't really help anyone in being able to assess whether that goal is met. And when is the employee supposed to achieve that goal? But you spoke about having clear deadlines. There's no deadline there. So really being able to articulate the goals in such a way that you can objectively decide whether or not it was something that was appropriate for the employee to try to meet and whether or not they've met it. And then you can determine your next steps from there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think ultimately documentation wins, but what wins most is clear documentation, details, having particulars and clear and realistic expectations of the individual, the employee, the role, their experience, their qualifications, and all these things come into consideration when you're trying to work out, well, how do I deal with this situation? So it's not just about having things in writing, it's stepping back from the document and thinking, does this make sense? Is this realistic? Has enough thought gone into this? From my perspective, it's imperative that those things are considered by whoever it may be, whether it's just sole practitioner employer with one employee, or all the way up to a 500 staff company with 10 HR employees managing it. That you really need to put in the same level of thought, from my perspective.
I agree. And you should also approach it from the perspective or the position that ultimately the person tasked with deciding whether or not these goals are measurable or have been met might not be you or the employee. It might find its way into the Fair Work Commission or into a court, and it will be someone sitting there objectively removed from that relationship who perhaps doesn't have the same degree of insight into what needs to go into a particular report to make it better.
Mm.
And so framing it in a way that will assist someone down the line is also going to put you in pretty good stead. And I think that applies on both sides for the employee and the employer.
Yeah, I think I could summarize it with in 3 points. It's expectations, and so we're talking about position description, KPIs,
Mm.
policies. Then we're talking about, secondly, conversations, file notes, dates, issues, responses, next steps. And the third thing we're thinking about is follow through, improvement plans, as you touched on, support offered, review dates. Um, and these are often good, from my perspective, good ways of handling things, because in employment situations, a lot of it comes down to poor communication, didn't have time to understand, no one sat down with someone, was just upset, needed someone to talk to. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding, and these things can spiral out of control. And so, yes, disputes are going to be inevitable no matter what, because sometimes it's just unfixable. But going through these processes can really minimize situations spiraling out of control.
Mm. And you use the word relationship, which is spot on because that's what it is. It's more than just a commercial dealing between two people. The employment relationship is something where there needs to be that give and take on both sides in order to make it work.